The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three dying stars, built by species so old that even their names had been forgotten. The walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Right now, they glowed. A worried orange dot ambassador Calver of the Drethan Empire walked into the hall like he owned it. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes looked at everything with disgust. The Drethan were conquerors. They had taken 400 worlds in the last 1,000 years. They feared nothing and no one dot behind him. 12 Drethan warriors stood in perfect formation. Each one was 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. They carried plasma rifles that could burn through steel like paper. The council members watched him approach. There were 47 species represented here, each one ancient beyond human understanding. Some had bodies of light. Others existed as clouds of thinking gas. A few looked almost normal, with arms and legs and faces that could smile or frown. Elder Councilor the Reese floated at the center of the great table. He was made of pure energy, a being so old that he had watched stars being born. His light was soft blue today, which meant he was worried. "Ambassador Calver," the Reese said, his voice like distant thunder. "You requested this meeting to discuss species 7291, the ones who call themselves humans." Calver made a sound that was half laugh, half snarl. "Yes, I want to know why these primitive creatures have protection status. It makes no sense." A ripple of discomfort passed through the council. Several members flickered or shifted or made small sounds of concern. The Reese blue light darkened slightly. "The humans are protected because the council decided they should be protected," he said carefully. "We have been watching them for 300 of their years. They are unique. Calver stepped closer to the great table. "They have barely left their home star. Their fastest ships take years to cross distances we cover in days. Their weapons are so primitive that my soldiers would not even feel them. What makes them unique?" The Reese was silent for a long moment. The crystal walls shifted to a deeper orange, almost red. "They do not give up," he said finally. "In all my years, watching all the species that have risen and fallen across this galaxy, I have never seen anything like humans. They simply refuse to accept defeat." Calver laughed out loud. It was an ugly sound. "Every species fights for survival. That is nothing special. You do not understand." Doris moved closer, his energy form growing brighter. "When other species face impossible odds, they surrender. They negotiate. They accept their fate and try to survive within the new reality. Humans do not do this. When humans face impossible odds, they fight harder. They become more dangerous, not less." "Stories," Calver said with contempt. "Tales to frighten children." "I will tell you a story," the Reese replied. 60 of their years ago, 2 groups of humans fought a great war. One group had more soldiers, more weapons, more resources. They invaded a small country that could not possibly win. Do you know what happened? Calver said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. The small country won. Their farmers and shopkeepers and children fought against trained soldiers with advanced weapons. They hid in tunnels. They attacked at night. They turned every tree and every rock into a weapon. The great power lost over 50,000 soldiers and eventually went home in shame. The small country celebrated their victory. "One battle means nothing," Calver said, but his voice was less certain now. It was not one battle. Their entire history is filled with such stories. Small groups defeating great empires. Weak nations destroying strong ones. Humans have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. They have learned things about war that no other species has ever needed to learn. Doris paused. They are the most experienced warriors in the galaxy, and they do not know how to surrender. Counselor Venari, a being that looked like a cloud of silver dust, spoke up. We place them under protection because we believe they will one day be valuable allies. But they are also dangerous. Any species that attacks them will regret it. Kelver turned to face the silver cloud. The Drethan Empire has never lost a war. We have conquered species that could destroy planets with a thought. You expect me to fear farmers and shopkeepers? I expect you to listen, Thuris said firmly. The humans have something we need to protect. Their home system contains the largest deposits of helium-3 in this quadrant. We know you want it. We are telling you, officially and clearly, that taking it from the humans would be a mistake. A mistake. Kelver let the word hang in the air. Let me tell you about mistakes. Elder, the mistake would be letting these primitives control resources that rightfully belong to the strong. The Drethan do not ask permission. We take what we need. He turned and began walking toward the exit. His warriors fell into step behind him. Ambassador, Thuris called out. I have existed for longer than your species has had language. I have watched empires rise and fall like waves on a beach. I am telling you now, with all the wisdom of my years, do not attack the humans. You will lose more than you can imagine. Kelver stopped at the door. He looked back over his shoulder, his yellow eyes bright with arrogance. When we have taken their world and their resources, I will return here, and you will apologize for wasting my time with these warnings. He made a gesture that meant something insulting in his culture. The Drethan fear nothing. Certainly not a species that still fights with chemical explosions and metal projectiles. He walked out. The crystal walls slowly faded from red back to orange, then to yellow, then to a sad gray. The council members looked at each other in silence. They had seen this before. Young species, so confident in their power, ignoring the wisdom of those who had lived longer. It always ended the same way. Should we warn the humans? Counselor Venari asked. Thuris considered the question. They already know. They have been watching the Drethan for years. They have been preparing. His light flickered in what might have been a sad smile. I almost feel sorry for Ambassador Kelver. He thinks he's about to win an easy victory. He has no idea what he is walking into. The crystal walls pulsed once, twice, then went dark. The meeting was over far away, on a small blue planet circling an ordinary yellow star. The humans looked up at the night sky and wondered when the aliens would come. They did not know exactly when, but they knew it would happen, and they were ready. Captain Park, Junho, was drinking coffee when the alarm started screaming. He put down his cup carefully and walked to the main screen of the UNSC, Horizon's Edge. The ship was old and small, built for patrol duty in the outer colonies. It was not built for war, but war had found it anyway. Report, he said calmly. Lieutenant Kim Yuna's fingers moved across her control panel. She was young, only 26, but she had steady hands and a sharp mind. 67 ships, Captain. They just appeared from hyperspace near Jupiter. The largest one is 8 kilometers long. Junho nodded slowly. He had been expecting this for years. Everyone had. The Drethan had made no secret of their interest in Earth's solar system. Our fleet strength? 12 ships, sir. The largest is the UNSC Victory at 2 kilometers. So they were outnumbered and outgunned by a factor that made the math almost pointless. Junho had faced bad odds before. During the resource wars of 2089, he had commanded a patrol boat against 3 enemy destroyers. He had won that fight, though it had cost him his left eye and most of his crew. Open a channel to Admiral Choi, he ordered, and begin broadcasting evacuation orders to all civilian stations. Admiral Choi Sujin appeared on the secondary screen moments later. She was 61 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much death. She had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 15 years, knowing that one day she would have to fight a battle she could not win. "Captain Park," she said, "I assume you see what I see." "Yes, Admiral." 67 ships. They will reach Earth orbit in approximately 3 days at their current speed. Our fleet cannot stop them. It was not a question. "No, Admiral. Not in a direct fight." Choi was silent for a moment. Behind her, Junho could see officers running back and forth, preparing for a battle that would decide the fate of humanity. "Then we will not fight directly," she said finally. "Captain, do you remember our contingency plans?" Junho almost smiled. "Operation Broken Ground." "Yes, Admiral. I remember." "Good. Begin Phase 1 immediately. All civilian ships are to scatter. Military vessels will engage in hit-and-run attacks only. We are not trying to win the battle, Captain. We are trying to win the war." "Understood, Admiral." "And Captain?" Choi's voice softened slightly. "Make them pay for every kilometer. Make them understand that Earth is not worth the cost." The channel closed. Junho turned to his crew, 14 men and women who had signed up to protect Earth and were now facing certain death. "You heard the Admiral," he said. "We cannot beat them in a straight fight. So we will not give them a straight fight. We will be ghosts. We will be nightmares. We will make them afraid to sleep." The crew looked at him with a mixture of fear and determination. These were the children of a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. They knew how to fight. More importantly, they knew how to lose and keep fighting anyway. 3 days later, the Drethan fleet entered Earth orbit. Fleet Commander Drexel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror's Pride, and looked down at the blue planet below. It was pretty, he thought. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It would make a nice addition to the Empire. "Report," he ordered. "The human fleet has scattered," his aide reported. "We destroyed 4 of their ships during approach. The rest have hidden among the asteroid fields and moons. Their orbital defense platforms are active but primitive." "Destroy the platforms," Drexel said casually. "Then begin landing troops." The Drethan weapons were terrible and efficient. Each shot from their main cannons carried enough energy to power a human city for a year. The orbital platforms, which had taken humanity decades to build, were destroyed in less than 15 minutes. Drexel watched with satisfaction as the last platform exploded in a ball of fire. This was almost too easy. "Begin descent," he ordered. "Target their major cities first. Once we control those, the rest will surrender." The landing ships dropped through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Each one carried 1,000 Drethan warriors, heavily armed and eager for conquest. They expected resistance. They expected to crush it quickly. They did not expect Beak Hannah. Hannah was 23 years old, an engineer who had been working on the Luna mining station when the invasion began. She had escaped on a small shuttle, just ahead of the Drethan advance. Now she floated in the debris field around what used to be Defense Platform 7, waiting. Her shuttle was dark, running on minimal power to avoid detection. To the Drethan sensors, it looked like just another piece of wreckage. But attached to its hull were 12 mine charges, each one powerful enough to crack an asteroid in half. She watched the Drethan fleet pass by, massive ships that blocked out the stars. Then she saw her target, a cruiser that had fallen slightly behind the main group, its engines running at reduced power. "For everyone who died today," she whispered, "and for everyone who will die tomorrow." She pushed the throttle forward. The shuttle shot out of the debris field, accelerating toward the cruiser. The Drethan detected her almost immediately, but they were confused. Why would one tiny shuttle attack a warship? They understood when she crashed into their engine section. The mining charges detonated on impact. The explosion tore through the cruiser's power core, setting off a chain reaction that split the ship in half. 800 Drethan died in less than 3 seconds. Hana died too, but she died smiling. Across the solar system, similar attacks were happening. Human pilots crashed their ships into Drethan vessels. Saboteurs who had hidden aboard captured stations, triggered explosives. Scientists released computer viruses into Drethan networks. By the end of the first day, the Drethan had lost 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers. They had complete control of Earth orbit, but they had learned their first lesson about humanity. Admiral Choi watched the reports come in from her hidden command center deep beneath the Korean mountains. Each loss hurt. Each death was a tragedy. But each attack also sent a message. "They think this is the end," she said to her staff. "They think we will surrender now that they control the skies. They do not understand." She looked at the map showing Drethan landing zones across the planet. Los Angeles, London, Beijing, Moscow, and Seoul, where enemy troops were already meeting their first resistance fighters. "This is not the end," she continued. "This is just the beginning. They have won the battle for space. Now they have to win the battle for Earth. And that battle will cost them more than they can possibly imagine." Outside, the first Renan dropships were touching down in the ruined streets of Seoul. The soldiers marched out in perfect formation, weapons ready, expecting terrified civilians. Instead, they found empty streets, empty buildings, empty silence. And watching from the shadows, hidden in basements and tunnels and places the aliens could not imagine, the people of Earth prepared for war. 6 months after the invasion began, Fleet Commander Drexel stood in the ruins of Seoul and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The city around him was mostly destroyed. Buildings that had once touched the clouds were now piles of broken stone and twisted metal. Fires burned everywhere, filling the air with black smoke. The streets were empty, but Drexel knew better than to think that meant they were safe. Nothing on this planet was safe. "Report," he said to his aide. A young Drethan named Crixon, who had arrived full of enthusiasm 3 months ago. Now Crixon jumped at shadows and slept with his weapon in his hands. "We lost another patrol last night, Commander." 30 soldiers. They were checking a building that our sensors said was empty. Crixon's voice shook slightly. "It was not empty." Drexel closed his secondary eyes. "How?" The humans had filled the walls with some kind of acid. When our soldiers entered, they triggered a mechanism that sprayed it everywhere. Their armor melted. They did not die quickly, Commander. This was the 37th patrol they had lost to building traps. The humans had turned every structure into a potential weapon. Some buildings exploded. Some released poison gas. Some simply collapsed on top of whoever entered them. The soldiers had started refusing to go inside any building at all, but that just meant the humans attacked them in the streets instead. "What about the factory district?" Drexel asked. "We were supposed to secure it yesterday." "We did secure it, Commander. Then we lost it during the night. The humans came up from underground. We did not even know there were tunnels there." Crixon hesitated. "They killed everyone. 200 soldiers. They left their bodies arranged in the shape of their flag." Drexel felt a cold anger building in his chest. When his fleet had arrived, he had expected this campaign to last a few weeks at most. The humans had no real military left. Their cities were occupied. Their governments had surrendered. But surrender, he had learned, meant nothing to humans. The governments might sign papers and make speeches, but the people ignored them completely. Old women poisoned water supplies. Children carried messages between resistance cells. Factory workers sabotaged equipment and then smiled innocently when questioned. Everyone was a potential enemy. Everyone. "Commander," another aide called out. "We have captured a human. A resistance leader. She's being brought here now." Drexel turned to see 4 Drethan soldiers dragging a human female across the broken street. She was small, even for her species, with dark hair and a face covered in dirt and blood. Her hands were bound behind her back, and she walked with a limp that suggested broken bones. But she was smiling. "You are Officer Shin Mai-Rei," Drexel said, reading from a datapad. "Leader of the Soul Resistance Cell. Responsible for at least 40 attacks on our forces." The woman looked up at him. She was maybe 30 years old, though it was hard to tell with humans. Her eyes showed no fear at all. 47, she corrected him. "You missed a few. You will tell us the location of your base. You will give us the names of your fellow resistance members. You will help us end this pointless fighting." Mai-Rei laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a scared laugh. It was the laugh of someone who genuinely found something funny. "You still do not understand, do you?" she said. "There is no base. There are no leaders. We are all leaders. Every person you pass on the street. Every child who watches you from a window. Every old man who seems too weak to fight. We are all the resistance. Then we will kill you all," Drexel growled. "You can try." Marie's smile did not fade. "But you have already tried. You have been killing us for 6 months. And somehow, there are always more of us. Always more people willing to fight. Always more attacks, more sabotage, more dead Drethan." She leaned forward as much as her bonds would allow. "Do you want to know a secret, Commander? We expected to lose this war. We knew your ships were bigger, your weapons were stronger, your soldiers were better trained. We knew we could not win a fair fight. So we decided not to fight fair." "Your resistance is futile," Drexel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it? 6 months ago, you had 67 ships. Now you have 54. 6 months ago, you landed 100,000 soldiers. How many do you have left?" Drexel said nothing. The number was 43,000 and had dropped every day. "We cannot beat your fleet," Mai-Rei continued. "But we do not need to. We just need to make this occupation so painful, so expensive, so bloody, that your empire decides we are not worth the trouble. And we are very, very good at being trouble." A distant explosion echoed across the city. More attacks. More dead soldiers. More reasons for the Drethan to wonder if this planet was worth the cost. "Take her away," Drexel ordered. "Find out what she knows." The soldiers dragged Mai-Rei toward a transport vehicle. As she passed, she called out one last thing. "We have a saying on Earth, Commander. Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Your ancestors should have warned you about us. Every empire that has ever tried to conquer a people who do not want to be conquered has failed. Every single one. You will fail too. It is only a matter of time." That night, Drexel sent a message to the Drethan High Command. He requested more troops, more ships, more resources. He warned them that the human campaign was not going as planned. He suggested very carefully that perhaps a negotiated withdrawal might be worth considering. The High Command sent back a simple response: victory or death. Drexel read the message and felt something he had never felt before in his military career. He felt afraid. In a tunnel beneath the ruined streets of Seoul, Officer Shin Tai-woo received word that his sister had been captured. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the grief wash over him. Then he opened them and looked at his fighters, 200 men and women who had given up everything to resist the occupation. Mai-Rei knew the risks, he said quietly. She accepted them. We all accept them. And we honor her sacrifice by continuing to fight. He turned to the map showing Drethan positions across the city. They think capturing one of us will break us. They do not understand that we are like water. You can hold water in your hands for a moment, but it always slips through. You can dam a river, but the water always finds a way around. You can evaporate the ocean, but it just falls as rain somewhere else. He pointed to a cluster of enemy positions near the old university. Tonight, we remind them why they should have listened to the Galactic Council. Tonight, we show them what it means to fight humans. His fighters nodded, their faces hard and determined. They knew many of them would die tonight. They did not care. They had stopped being afraid a long time ago. The Drethin had taken their homes, killed their families, destroyed their cities, but they had not taken their spirit, and they never would. 1 year after the invasion began, Ambassador Kelver returned to the Galactic Council. He looked nothing like the proud conqueror who had dismissed their warnings 12 months ago. His scales had lost their shine. His yellow eyes were dull with exhaustion. He walked slowly, like every step caused him pain. The crystal walls of the great hall glowed a curious purple as he entered. The council members watched him approach in silence. They had been receiving reports about the human campaign for months. They knew what was coming. Elder Councillor Duris floated at the center of the great table, his energy form a steady blue. He waited until Kelver stood before him, then spoke in a voice that held no satisfaction. "Ambassador, you requested an emergency meeting. We are listening." Kelver tried to stand straight to maintain some dignity, but his voice cracked when he spoke. The Drethin Empire requires assistance with the human situation. A murmur passed through the council. This was unprecedented. The Drethin had never asked anyone for help with anything. "Please explain," Doris said. "We have lost." The words seemed to cause Kelver physical pain. "Not the battles. We win every battle. Our weapons destroy their armies. Our ships control their skies. Our soldiers occupy their cities. But none of it matters." He pulled up a holographic display showing casualty figures. The numbers were staggering. In 12 months, we have lost over 60,000 soldiers. Not to their military. We destroyed that in the first week. We lost them to farmers, teachers, students, doctors, old people, children. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Last month, a human boy who could not have been more than 10 years old walked into one of our command posts. He was carrying a box of food, offering to trade. Our soldiers thought he was harmless. Kelver paused. The box was filled with explosives. He killed himself and 17 of our officers. 17. A child. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Even species who had seen countless wars found this disturbing. "They do not fight like soldiers," Kelver continued. "They fight like nothing I have ever seen. They use their own bodies as weapons. They poison their own water rather than let us drink it. They burn their own cities rather than let us use them. They would rather die than submit. All of them. Every single one." Councillor Venari, the Silver Cloud, spoke up. "We warned you about this. Humans have a long history of asymmetric warfare. They have perfected the art of making conquest too expensive to maintain." "I did not believe you," Kelver admitted. "I thought our technology, our numbers, our experience would be enough. I was wrong." The RIS-S energy form pulsed slowly. "What assistance do you request?" "We need the Council to mediate a withdrawal. The humans have contacted us through back channels. They are willing to negotiate." Kelver's claws scraped against the floor. "They've offered us terms." Complete silence fell over the hall. In the entire history of the Galactic Council, no conquered species had ever offered terms to their conquerors. "What terms?" Doris asked. "Full withdrawal of all Drethin forces from their system. Reparations for damages to their planet and people, and..." Kelver hesitated, his shame obvious. A public acknowledgement, broadcast to every system in the galaxy, that the Drethan Empire was defeated by humanity. The purple light in the crystal walls deepened. Several council members made sounds of disbelief. They want the galaxy to know what happened here, the Reese said quietly. They want everyone to understand what happens to species that attack humanity. Yes, they are using us as an example. A warning to anyone else who might consider threatening them. Kelver looked up, and for the first time, his eyes showed something like respect. They are not just winning this war. They are winning all the wars that might have come after, because no one will ever dare attack them again. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the mountains near Bizon, Admiral Choi Sujin received the news of the Drethan surrender request. She read the message twice, then 3 times, making sure she understood correctly. Captain Park Jun-ho stood beside her, reading over her shoulder. His face was gaunt and scarred, marked by a year of impossible war. But his eyes were bright. They are actually going to do it, he said. They are going to surrender. Not surrender, Choi corrected him. Withdraw. There's a difference. They still have their empire. They still have their fleet. But they are admitting that they cannot hold Earth. Is that not surrender? Choi smiled tiredly. Close enough. She looked at the map showing resistance activity across the planet. Even now, after a year of brutal fighting, attacks were happening every hour. The Drethan controlled the cities, but they controlled nothing else. Every road was dangerous. Every building was a potential trap. Every human was a potential fighter. 30 million, she said quietly. That is how many we have lost. 30 million dead. Cities destroyed. Farms burned. Families torn apart. We have paid a terrible price for this victory. But we won, Junho said. Against impossible odds, against enemies with technology centuries ahead of ours, we won. We survived, Choi corrected him again. That is what humans do. We survive. And we make sure our enemies know how much it will cost to try again. She began drafting humanity's response to the Drethan offer. The terms were simple. Leave pay and tell everyone what happened here. It was harsh, but it was fair. The Drethan had started this war. They would end it on humanity's terms. 2 weeks later, the withdrawal began. Drethan ships lifted off from occupied cities, carrying the survivors of an occupation that had cost them more than any war in their history. They left behind ruined cities and scorched earth. They also left behind the bodies of 60,000 soldiers who would never return home. Officer Shin Tai-woo watched the last Drethan transport rise into the sky over Seoul. Beside him stood the remains of his resistance cell. Only 47 fighters out of the 200 he had started with. The others had died during the occupation, including his sister Mireille. Is it over? Asked Lieutenant Kan Minji, one of the survivors. Tai-woo shook his head slowly. The fighting is over. But the work is just beginning. We have to rebuild everything. Our cities, our farms, our families, our lives. He looked around at the ruins of the city he had grown up in. Smoke still rose from a dozen fires. Bodies still lay in the streets, waiting for burial. The destruction was almost total, but humans had rebuilt before. After world wars, after natural disasters, after plagues that killed millions, they always rebuilt. Let them go, Tai-woo said, watching the Drethan ships disappear into the clouds. Let them go home and tell everyone what happened here. Let them explain to the galaxy why the mighty Drethan Empire failed to conquer one small planet. He turned to face his fighters. These brave men and women who had given everything for freedom. We did not win because we were stronger. We won because we refused to lose. Remember that. Teach your children that. Because one day, someone else might look at our planet and think we are easy targets. And when that day comes, they will learn the same lesson that Drethin learned. He raised his hand in a salute. Earth endures. Humanity endures. Now let us rebuild. The fighters saluted back, then scattered to begin the long work of reconstruction. Above them, the sky was clear for the first time in a year, empty of alien ships and alien weapons. They had won, and the galaxy would never forget it. 10 years after the Drethin withdrew in defeat, humanity received its first official delegation from the Galactic Council. The meeting was held in the rebuilt chambers of what used to be the United Nations, now called the United Earth Assembly. The building was new, constructed on the ashes of the old one, but designed to look almost exactly the same. Humans had a habit of rebuilding things the way they were before. It was their way of saying that nothing could truly destroy them. The walls were lined with memorial plaques. Each one carried the names of people who had died during the occupation. There were 30 million names in total, covering every wall of the building and extending into gardens and parks outside. Visitors had to walk past thousands of names just to reach the main chamber. Elder Counselor the Riss led the Galactic Council delegation. His energy form cast soft blue light across the assembled dignitaries as he floated to the center of the room. Behind him came representatives from 47 species, some of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They came to offer humanity membership in the Galactic Council. They also came to see, with their own eyes, the species that had defeated the Drethin Empire. Speaker Han Ji-won rose to meet them. She was the elected leader of the United Earth Assembly, a position she had held for 3 years. But 10 years ago, she had been someone very different. A resistance courier, running through tunnels filled with Drethin patrols, carrying messages between fighter cells. A thin scar ran across her neck, marking where an energy blade had nearly killed her. She wore it openly, without shame. Every human adult bore scars from the occupation. They were badges of honor now. "Elder Counselor," she said, bowing slightly. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored by your visit." The Riss returned the bow, his form flickering with respect. "Speaker Han, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity formal membership among the civilized species of this galaxy. Your protection mandate has been upgraded." A murmur passed through the human delegates. This was expected, but still significant. Membership in the Council meant access to technology, trade routes, and diplomatic relationships that can advance human civilization by centuries. "We accept," Ji-won said. "But we have conditions." The Rhesus form brightened with surprise. No species had ever attached conditions to Council membership before. Name them. First, humanity will not be protected by the Council. We protect ourselves. We have proven that we can do this. The Council delegates shifted uncomfortably. The protection mandate was one of the Council's most important powers. Giving it up voluntarily was unheard of. Second, Ji-won continued, no species may claim territory within 50 light-years of Earth without our explicit agreement. This is our space now. We earned it. More uncomfortable shifting. 50 light-years was a large area, containing hundreds of star systems and countless resources. Third, the Council will add a new provision to its charter. Any species that attacks a member world without provocation forfeits its own protections. We want to make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. The Ars considered these demands. They were bold, even aggressive. But they were also fair. Humanity had earned the right to make demands. "You ask much," he said finally. "We paid much," Ji-won replied. Her hand unconsciously touched the scar on her neck. 30 million of us died. Our cities were ash. Our children grew up in bunkers, learning to fight before they learned to read. We earned the right to ask. She looked around the chamber at the memorial plaques covering every wall. We are not asking for charity. We are not asking for protection. We are asking for recognition. Recognition that humanity is no longer a young species to be protected and controlled. We are partners now, equals, and we expect to be treated as such. The council delegates exchanged glances. Some were clearly uncomfortable with this new reality. Others seemed impressed, even excited. The galaxy had been ruled by the same powers for thousands of years. A new player changing the dynamics could be either dangerous or beneficial. Darius made his decision. He had watched humanity for decades. He had warned the Drethin about them. He had seen them prove his warnings right. If any species deserved respect, it was this one. Your terms are accepted, he said. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity. May you prove as remarkable in peace as you were in war. Jiwan smiled. It was the same quiet, determined smile that Drethin soldiers had learned to fear during the occupation. We intend to. 50 years later. Human ships patrolled the borders of 100 allied systems. Human engineers built space stations that rivaled anything the ancient species had created. Human scientists solved problems that had puzzled the galaxy for millennia. Human diplomats sat on the Galactic Council, and human soldiers served as peacekeepers in conflicts across the stars. The Drethin Empire had shrunk to a shadow of its former self. After their defeat on Earth, other conquered peoples had risen up, inspired by humanity's example. The empire that had once controlled 400 worlds now held less than 50. Ambassador Kelver had not lived to see this decline. He had died shortly after the withdrawal, some said of shame. Others said the High Command had arranged his death to avoid the embarrassment of a living witness to their greatest failure. But his story lived on. Every species in the galaxy knew the tale of the Drethin, who had ignored the Council's warning about a small, primitive species on the edge of the galaxy, on Earth. In a museum built where Sol had once burned, a simple plaque bore the words that had become humanity's motto. Millions of visitors from across the galaxy came to see it every year. They stood before it in silence, reading the words that explained everything about the strange, stubborn, terrifying species called humans. The plaque read, "They thought us weak because we were few. They thought us broken because we bled. They never understood that humans do not measure strength by what we have, but by what we refuse to lose." Han Jiwan, long retired from politics, visited the museum on the 50th anniversary of the liberation. She was 77 years old now, her hair white, her body frail. But her eyes were still sharp, still filled with the fire that had carried her through tunnels and battlefields half a century ago. She stood before the plaque and remembered the fear, the pain, the loss, but also the courage, the determination, the absolute refusal to surrender that had saved her species from extinction. A young girl approached her, maybe 8 or 9 years old. She had dark hair and curious eyes. "Are you Speaker Han?" the girl asked. "My teacher said you were a resistance fighter." Jaewon smiled and knelt down to the girl's level. "I was. A long time ago. When I was not much older than you are now. Were you scared?" "Every day. Every hour. Every minute." Jiwan reached out and took the girl's hand. But being scared does not mean you cannot be brave. Being scared just means you understand how important something is. I was scared because I understood that if we gave up, if we stopped fighting, humanity would be gone forever. "But we won," the girl said. "Yes, we won. Not because we were the strongest or smartest or the best. We won because we refused to lose. Because every single one of us, from the oldest grandmother to the youngest child, decided that our freedom was worth more than our lives." She looked up at the plaque, at the words that had come to define her species. Remember that. When you grow up, when you face your own challenges, remember that being human means never giving up. never surrendering, always finding a way forward, no matter how dark things seem. The girl nodded seriously, then ran off to rejoin her school group. Jiwon stood slowly, her joints aching, and looked out the window at the rebuilt city beyond. The streets were full of people now, humans and aliens alike, going about their lives in peace. Children played in parks. Families shared meals. Young lovers walked hand in hand. This was what they had fought for. Not glory, not revenge, just the simple right to live as they chose, to build their future on their own terms. The stars had learned to respect humanity, and humanity had earned that respect with blood and sacrifice and an unbreakable will. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. Neither would Earth.